Hi, Aqua Roomers. It's time for chapter reading. We left off reading about two bears. The first bear, do you remember? Ma slapped the bear, thinking that it was Suki the cow, when Laura was helping her because Pa had not come home from town. He'd gone to trade his furs. And then, for the second bear, on the way home, look what Pa saw. Does that look exactly like a bear? Do you see the nose? And the claws? Oh yeah. And Pa, it was a tree stump, but it looked just like a bear. Wow. And this is where we left off. And Mary asked, "It really wasn't a bear at all?" "No, Mary, it wasn't a bear at all. There, I had been yelling and dancing and waving my arms all by myself in the big woods, trying to scare a tree stump." Laura said, "Ours was really a bear, but we weren't scared because we thought it was Suki." Pa did not say anything, but he hugged her tighter. "Ooh, that bear might have eaten Ma and me all up," Laura said, snuggling closer to him. But Ma walked right up to him and slapped him. He didn't do anything at all. "Why didn't he do anything?" "I guess he was too surprised to do anything, Laura," Pa said. "I guess he was afraid. When the lantern shone in his eyes, and when Ma walked up to him and slapped him, he knew she wasn't afraid." "Well, you were brave too," Laura said. "Even if it was only a tree stump, you thought it was a bear. You'd have hit him on the head with a club if he had been a bear, wouldn't you, Pa?" "Yes," said Pa, "I would. You see, I had to." Then Ma said it was bedtime. She helped Laura and Mary undress and buttoned up their red flannel nightgown. They knelt down by the trundle bed and said their prayers. "Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take." I used to say that prayer when I was a little girl. Ma kissed them both and tucked the covers in around them. They lay there a while, looking at Ma's smooth, parted hair and her hands busy with sewing in the lamplight. Her needle made little clicking sounds against her thimble, and then the thread went softly whoosh through the pretty calico that Pa had traded furs for. Laura looked at Pa, who was greasing his boots. His mustaches and his hair and his long brown beard were silky in the lamplight, and the colors of his plaid jacket were gay. He whistled cheerfully while he worked, and then he sang, "The birds were singing in the morning, and the myrtle and the ivy were in bloom, and the sun o'er the hills was a dawning. 'Twas then that I lay her in the tomb." It was a warm night. The fire had gone, and the coals on the hearth, and Pa did not build it up. All around the little house in the big woods, there were little sounds of falling snow, and from the eaves there was the drip, drip, drip of the melting icicles. In just a little while, the trees would be putting out their baby leaves, all rosy and yellow and pale green, and there would be wildflowers and birds in the woods. Then there would be no more stories by the fire at night, but all day long Laura and Mary would run and play among the trees, for it would be spring. The sugar snow. For days the sun shone and the weather was warm. There was no frost on the windows in the mornings. All day the icicles fell, one by one from the eaves, with the soft smashing and crackling sounds in the snowbanks beneath. The trees shook their wet black branches, and chunks of snow fell down. When Mary and Laura pressed their noses against the cold window pane, they could see the drip of water from the eaves and the bare branches of the trees. The snow did not glitter. It looked soft and tired. Under the trees, it was pitted where the chunks of snow had fallen, and the banks beside the path were shrinking and settling. Then one day, Laura saw a patch of bare ground in the yard. All day it grew bigger, and before night, the whole yard was bare mud. Only the icy path was left, and the snowbanks along the path and the fence and beside the woodpile. "Can I go out to play, Ma?" Laura asked. And Ma said, "May, Laura." "May I go out to play?" she asked. "You may tomorrow," Ma promised. That night, Laura woke up shivering. The bed covers felt thin, and her nose was icy cold. Ma was tucking another quilt over her. "Snuggle close to Mary," Ma said, "and you'll get warm." In the morning, the house was warm from the stove, and when Laura looked out of the window, she saw that the ground was covered with soft, thick snow. All along the branches of the trees, the snow was piled like feathers, and it lay in mounds along the top of the rail fence, and it stood up in great white balls on top of the gate posts. Pa came in, shaking the soft snow from his shoulders and stamping it from his boots. "It's a sugar snow," he said. Laura put her tongue quickly to a little bit of the white snow that lay in a fold of his sleeve. It was nothing but wet on her tongue, like any snow. She was glad that nobody had seen her taste it. "Why is it a sugar snow, Pa?" she asked him. But he said he didn't have time to explain now. He must hurry away. He was going to Grandpa's. Grandpa lived far away in the big woods, where the trees were closer together and larger. Laura stood at the window and watched Pa, big and swift and strong, walking away over the snow. His gun was on his shoulder, his hatchet and powder horn hung at his side, and his tall boots made great tracks in the soft snow. Laura watched him till he was out of sight in the woods. It was light before he came home that night. Ma had already lighted the lamp when he came in. Under one arm, he carried a large package, and in the other hand was a big covered wooden bucket. "Here, Caroline," he said, handing the package and the bucket to Ma. And then he put the gun on his hook over the door. "If I'd met a bear," he said, "I couldn't have shot him without dropping my load." Then he laughed. "And if I dropped that bucket and bundle, I wouldn't have to shoot him. I could have stood and watched him eat what's in them and lick his chops." Ma unwrapped the package, and there were two hard brown cakes, each as large as a milk pan. She uncovered the bucket, and it was full of dark brown syrup. "Here," Laura and Mary, Pa said, and he gave them each a little round package out of his pocket. They took off the paper wrappings, and each had a little hard brown cake with beautiful crinkled edges. "Bite it," said Pa, and his blue eyes twinkled. Each bit off a little crinkle, and it was sweet. It crumbled in their mouths. It was better even than their Christmas candy. Maple sugar, said Pa. Supper was ready, and Laura and Mary had the little maple sugar cakes beside their plates while they ate the maple syrup on their bread. After supper, Pa took them on his knees as he sat before the fire and told them about his day at Grandpa's and the sugar snow. All winter, Pa said, Grandpa has been making wooden buckets and little troughs. He made them of cedar and white ash, for those woods won't give a bad taste to the maple syrup. To make the troughs, he split out little sticks as long as my hand and as big as my 2 fingers. Near one end, Grandpa cut the stick half through and split one half off. This left him a flat stick with a square piece at one end. Then, with a bit, he bored a hole lengthwise through the square part, and with his knife he whittled the wood till it was only a thin shell around a round hole. The flat part of the stick he hollowed out with his knife till it was little whittled through. This is what it looks like. So, do you see those? Those are the troughs. These are the buckets that Grandpa made. And that is what, if you move over to here, this is what he stuck into the trees. And then the syrup would come down and drip right into the bucket. He had to do this by hand, carving this himself, every single one. That is hard work. He made dozens of them, and he made 10 new wooden buckets. He had them all ready when the first warm weather came and the sap began to move in the trees. Then he went to the maple woods, and with his bit he bored a hole in each maple tree, and he hammered the round end of the little trough into the hole. He set a cedar bucket on the ground under the flat end. The sap, you know, is the blood of a tree. It comes up from the roots. When the warm weather begins in spring, it goes to the very tip of each branch and twig to make the leaves grow. When the maple sap came to the hole in the tree, it ran out of the tree, down the little trough, and into the bucket. Oh, it didn't hurt the poor tree, Laura asked. No more than it hurts when you prick your finger and it bleeds, said Pa. Every day, Grandpa puts on his boots and his warm coat and his fur cap and goes out into the snowy woods and gathers the sap with a barrel. On a sled, he drives from tree to tree and empties the sap from the buckets into the barrel. Whoa. And then he hauls it to a big iron kettle that hangs by a chain from a cross timber between 2 trees. Whoa. Look at this. So, all those little buckets, he has to go from tree to tree, collect every little bucket. He pours it into this huge bucket. Well, that is so big, that has to be pulled by 2 oxen on a sled. That is a lot of hard work. My goodness. And then he empties the sap into an iron kettle. There's a big bonfire under the kettle. The sap boils. Grandpa watches it carefully. The fire must not be hot enough to keep the sap boiling, but hot enough to make it boil over. So, we're going to find out tomorrow what happens. Ooh, this is quite an adventure. So, until tomorrow, Aqua Roomers, I hope you like chapter reading. Lots more to come. Really good. Okay? Till next time. Bye-bye.